know, few things in technology right now inspire as much fascination, doubt, and personal indignation as self-driving cars.
Some are arguing that companies are rushing this technology.
I do know that the broader idea behind why autonomous is important is because 33,000 people die every year in car accidents.
I think there will be a big reduction in accidents over a longer period of time. And of course, it already has. I mean, cars have been made way, way safer.
It's a great question. Look, I'm a robotics professor. I'm very pro-technology. I also have a 10-year-old, and I would like these cars in place before she turns 16.
You'll see experiments in a few leading-edge cities around the world during the next decade. And if those go well, it'll start to spread.
Think about this: a world without texting and driving, drunk drivers, road rage. This may sound far-fetched, but the reality is approaching. It's a topic that many cannot believe is happening, having cars on the road without a driver. To think that someday computers could be taking us from point A to point B is frightening to some. And already, there have been tests of these electronic chauffeurs.
So you saw the car navigating along roads that were busy, where there were unexpected things happening, where there were people on the sidewalk, where there were cyclists, and it navigated those, I would say, better than most human drivers. So you could see the potential in this technology.
The autonomous cars, they would work perfect if everyone followed the law and did what they were expected to do.
There's people for, I want to say, low-income areas. They spend, on average, 90 minutes one way to get to and from work. So to try and give those people a better quality of life, it would keep people from texting while they're driving. Now they have something else driving for them, and they can text all they want, they can work, they can get their emails done. So it would hopefully give some people some of that day back, as opposed to being stuck sitting in a car driving.
Sky's the limit of what will get done. And let's not forget that planes have been flying autonomously for many years. But they didn't happen overnight. Lots of testing and validation went into that. And vehicles will follow a similar route. And arguably one could say that vehicles on the ground probably have more variables to contend with than planes in the air, albeit slightly different risk factors, but nonetheless, it's a process. We follow the process, we validate the process and ensure the vehicle is as safe as it can be.
So the question was, did I feel safe? And it was a challenging traffic environment. It's a busy place, there's all sorts of obstacles. I felt as safe in that car with a safety driver behind the wheel as I would riding with anybody else under those circumstances in broad daylight.
Ryan Randazzo is a business reporter for the Arizona Republic, the Grand Canyon State's largest newspaper. In the 11 years that he's served at the Republic, he started to notice self-driving cars in Arizona around 2015. Different companies like Google and Uber started investing resources into the research behind this. Then,
that's when our governor issued an executive order that sort of welcomed that technology to come test in Arizona, and it wasn't very long after that we started to actually see cars on the road here.
That executive order Randazzo mentioned was released in August of 2015 that said, quote, "It is in Arizona's interest to support the development of these technologies by allowing testing and operation of self-driving vehicles on certain public roads." The order also mentions that these, quote, "pilot programs will be enabled on campuses of selected universities." One of those institutions these cars were around was Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. Dr. Andrew Maynard is a professor at ASU's School for the Future of Innovation in Society and has explored this technology from all angles.
So we talk about a lot of technologies, but because this one is so close to home, especially with the testing on the roads around Tempe and Phoenix, we talk quite a lot about what the implications are. We approach it from multiple levels. So one is a mindset of how do you think about new technologies within society? Do you just accept whatever companies do, or do you start asking questions about how we do this in a way which is socially responsible? But there's a broader conversation that we have with our students about thinking how you develop technologies in ways that are going to benefit the most number of people without causing undue problems. And so with self-driving vehicles, you could see it going one of a number of ways. And one way it could go is that because nobody's thinking about the consequences, you end up having really quite serious unintended consequences of the technology. On the other hand, you can imagine if people are thinking now about how to do this in the most socially responsible way possible, you end up with a really strong technology that benefits more people than it harms.
Two autonomous companies that have populated Valley roads are Waymo and Uber. Uber, a ride-sharing service, first experimented its technology with a safety driver in late 2016. Waymo, which is owned by Google, began driving around Arizona shortly after Uber did, and since October of 2017, its remote sensor vehicles have driven in the state without a safety driver.
A topic like self-driving cars, it's really easy for people to passively just accept what's happening. So they see Ubers and Waymos on the roads and they just think, that's interesting, that's cool, and then think nothing of it. The trouble is, if you don't think about the consequences, it's too easy for somebody else, the companies in this case, to make all the decisions about what works and what doesn't work. So one of the things we try and teach our students to do is to think a little bit more analytically and a little bit more intentionally about what the risks and benefits of new technologies are. So when it comes to self-driving vehicles, we try and get them to think about what sort of future would they like to see? How would they like to see this technology developed? I actually had a ride in one of the Waymos a year ago, and I was blown away by how exciting the technology was. So what really excited me was a technology that, if we get it right, it is not distracted by phones. It's not a technology where its attention wanders. It's a technology that allows it to see everything that's happening around it, and it can make really smart decisions about how to drive safely. So yes, with my experience, I thought I can see how this could succeed and how it could benefit people's lives.
It's a combination of different sensors allow the vehicle to see, quote unquote, see the environment it's operating in. There are LiDAR, the laser-based sensors that scan the environment many times a second, basically generating a point cloud of data of distances to known reflecting objects. Additional sensors like radar, tracking moving objects in real time so the vehicle can understand what's moving in the environment around it, how to best plot its trajectory to either avoid or stop and completely eliminate any potential impacts with those objects. And then there's camera, where we're actually giving machine vision to the onboard compute system. So in addition to the LiDAR and radar, it can see various objects in its path, either in front of it or behind it, and ultimately ensure a safe and reliable operation of the vehicle at any given point in time.
People who have ridden in say, an Uber vehicle in Tempe, they would know this because there's a screen in the back seat that would show you basically what the vehicle is seeing and detecting on the roadways, and it's highly detailed. So the sensors that are on the cars pick up other vehicles, they pick up pedestrians, cyclists. We actually passed a bus, and the sensors were showing us enough detail that you could see the passengers inside of that bus.
Chase Sapphire has sent me to discover what's next in travel. For my latest stop, I've come down to Tennessee. While I'm here, I'm going to get a 3D car printed to help me with all of my Tennessean needs. Is that a thing? I'm just waiting here. There should be someone called Ollie coming to pick me up. Ollie?
Hello, James.
Who's that?
It's me, Ollie. Please have a seat.
Right. Where's the driver?
I wanted to make sure that Ollie was friendly. Everybody is very scared of autonomous technology. What does that mean for them? They don't know how it works. They're afraid that it's, they're robots taking over the world.
It's the future. I mean, you look at that vehicle, you don't see the now, you see what vehicles are going to be in the future, from its exterior styling to how the interior is laid out, where it's open and warm and inviting. It really was different, and it drew me to it when I first saw it, and have loved working on it since then.
The difference that Creasy is talking about is Ollie, an autonomous and electric-powered shuttle. Originally named Berlino, the vehicle was designed by a 24-year-old student from Colombia named Edgar Sarmiento. The company of Local Motors adopted his design and transformed it into the vehicle you see now, Ollie.
So we see self-driving technology, just by putting a self-driving technology into a normal passenger vehicle, doesn't fix the current issue and the future issues of congestion. I mean, if anything, you may end up increasing the congestion in areas because now People aren't really looking for another solution to their normal ride.
Local Motors is a car manufacturing company in Chandler, Arizona. Its functionalities include developing cars from 3D printed materials. But Ollie can do much more than just drive.
We integrated some technology from Kintrans, which is a group that does sign language recognition. So you could actually sign to Ollie. Ollie will then sign back. But they have a camera that can see you, and it interprets your sign language, and it tells like the character that's in the screen on Ollie, and you would actually be able to sign back and forth with Ollie. But it comes up as text as well for somebody that may be with you or somebody that might be standing by you that could potentially help you answer the question. Another really cool one is called Ultra Haptics. They create invisible buttons, walls, and things like that. So somebody who has vision loss, they could potentially be able to be led into an open seat so that they don't have to come across, embarrassed and sit on somebody accidentally.
The Ollie is a very effective first mile, last mile transportation solution. And even beyond that, it's more engaging. The technology we have in this vehicle to interact with the riders, the participants in the transportation experience, if you will, is by far some of the most advanced in the industry. From the cognitive platform on the vehicle that can answer intuitive questions about surroundings, where the vehicle's going, when it's going to get there, and current weather conditions or local points of interest.
Stotler said that Ollie is currently running in Copenhagen, Denmark, Michigan, and also just outside of Maryland. She also said that Ollie will be rolling around the University of Buffalo as part of a development project with their students. And it could be possible that Local Motors launches it, well, locally.
We've been in talks with and have met with ASU about potentially deploying on ASU's campus. And I know it's been a while since I've been there, but I'm sure that there are still parking issues and long walks to your classes and different buildings and getting from A to B. So we would see Ollie being used on university campuses, not only to move the teachers and students around to help with everyone's long walks, parking issues, and then there's the potential to actually get a vehicle that is made for like a research and development project. And the students that are part of certain classes would be able to get to go into Ollie, create maybe something that would connect to Ollie, or maybe they're going to change, they want to work with hub motor technology and see how that would enhance things.
I can see something like that. I think there are some really tough questions. So having, say, a 12-seater vehicle with no driver and no way of driving it within a small community, say just going around the ASU campus, that would be fairly easy to implement, I think, and you could see the real benefits of that. As soon as you try and integrate something like that onto public roads, I think there is a much bigger set of questions, because that vehicle has got to be able to integrate with other drivers on the road. It's got to be able to interact with human drivers. And if it doesn't have that ability, or if it somehow changes the dynamic on the road, you've got a number of tough questions to ask there.
A bicyclist seriously hurt in a crash with a self-driving Uber vehicle on Mill Avenue near Curry. We don't know right now whether there was a human driver at the controls at the time of the crash or not.
Right now, we're seeing the shocking and disturbing new video from the crash involving a self-driving Uber in Tempe.
The National Transportation Safety Board is sending investigators to Tempe, Arizona. Police are still figuring out who was at fault, but there are serious questions now because this was part of Uber's pilot program to see whether this works at all.
If the car was in autonomous mode, then the sensors should have spotted that pedestrian. That's exactly what they're there for. That's the whole foundation of self-driving technology. You can't have self-driving cars if they can't sense what's in front of them.
On March 18, 2018, the intersection of Mill Avenue and Curry Road in Tempe was the scene of a fatal crash. A self-driving Uber struck and killed a pedestrian, and was the first death involving an autonomous test vehicle. And the public's reactions to this event? shocked to say the least.
Surprising, to be honest. I mean, as someone who's followed the industry, listened to the companies talk about the benefits of their sensing technology, seen their sensors in action, seen cars react to objects in the road, I was confused as to how a self-driving car that was in autonomous mode could have such a catastrophic failure of its technology with what appeared to me to be a pretty simple driving situation. It was a slow-moving object, a slow-moving pedestrian moving across the road. It's exactly the kind of thing that self-driving technology should be able to avoid easily. I mean, it should have been a layup.
You know, seeing the video, the first thing I saw was the responsible driver that was in the vehicle at the time for the Uber vehicle was distracted. She was looking down, totally eyes off of the road. And I see that as the driver's responsibility, but even more so as in a corporate sense, I see Uber really made a huge mistake because they're responsible for that program. And I think it would have been very easy for them to have some kind of facial recognition program because the driver was being videotaped. So it'd be easy for the program to see that her eyes were not on the road. And if that's the case, it should have done some type of alert or at least mark that moment so Uber can say, hey, our drivers are not even paying attention. And it kind of goes back into the autonomous cars interacting with real life. You know, I think a lot of pedestrians out here kind of have the sense that a car's going to see me and they will stop for me. Because if I'm driving a car and I see somebody, I'm going to stop for them. But maybe the autonomous car just didn't recognize that in enough time. And the pedestrian was thinking, well, they have to stop for me because I have the right of way.
And I think it's totally up in the air whether Uber continues in the self-driving car business or whether they move out of that, because clearly their technology wasn't up to the task. And so you can certainly see that if you've got a car where either the sensors aren't picking things up the way they should, or the computer brain of the car isn't interpreting those signals in the way that it should, you've got a potential problem. Well, of course, I want to know what went wrong technically. What I'm actually more interested in is what is the company's attitude to safety and responsibility. And to do that, you've got to understand what the culture of safety is within a company, how seriously they take their responsibility to ensure that their technology is safe under every conceivable condition, how much they invest in making sure that safety is the first thing on their priority list. So these are all things that I would love to know, not only about Uber, but about Waymo and other companies. How far are they going beyond just developing a neat technology to understanding the social implications of what they're doing, the policy implications of what they're doing, and even the environmental implications? It's really up to the task there. And so you can certainly see that if you've got a car where either the sensors aren't picking things up the way they should, or the computer brain of the car isn't interpreting those signals in the way that it should, you've got a potential problem.
I think we also have to consider the possibility that the car was not actually in autonomous mode. We got that information from police immediately after the accident. We have asked police how they know it was in autonomous mode. So do the Tempe Police Department, do they know how to read the vehicle log of an autonomous vehicle and say with certainty within a few hours of the accident what mode the car was in? Or were they relying on the driver to tell them that? And then when we saw from the video, the driver did appear to be distracted. We're not sure by what, but clearly the driver was looking underneath the dashboard where you might hold a cell phone or a laptop or a tablet or your lunch, and she was not looking at the roadway. So it's at least plausible that following an accident where someone lost their lives, the driver said the car was in autonomous mode, and in fact it wasn't. I mean, we won't know that until the federal investigation into this accident is concluded.
Upon reaching out to Uber, the company did not return requests for comment on the incident. Uber did release this tweet the day after the accident that says, quote, "Our hearts go out to the victim's family. We're fully cooperating with Tempe police and local authorities as they investigate this incident." The crash was under investigation and the National Transportation Safety Board was brought on for it as well. Following the incident, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey sent out a letter to Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi that read that the company's ability to test autonomous vehicles on Arizona public roads would be suspended. Uber complied to Ducey's request and also said that they had suspended autonomous tests in Pittsburgh, Toronto, and San Francisco.
So if you're behind the wheel of the vehicle, it doesn't matter if it's in autonomous mode or manual mode or whether it has automatic braking technology. If you're behind the wheel of the vehicle, you are ultimately responsible for that. In this accident, though, it did involve a jaywalker, and if you're crossing the street outside of a crosswalk in Arizona, it's your responsibility to yield to traffic, which apparently didn't happen. So it's unknown whether a driver, even if that driver was distracted, would be cited in this situation. So it's actually pretty complicated because you have the autonomous issue to deal with, and you also have the vehicle operator responsibility. If we get to the point where there's literally nobody inside of a car, the governor has issued an executive order that says he wants any company running fully autonomous vehicles with no operator to sign an affidavit that they're ultimately responsible for the actions of that car should it violate any laws.
According to data from the Governor's Highway Safety Association, Arizona ranked first per accidents viewed in relation to the state's population. Arizona's rate of pedestrian deaths was a 1.61 per 100,000 people. It is also one of 5 states accounting for 43% of all U.S. pedestrian deaths for the first 6 months of 2017, according to the GHSA. As of May 2018, there are no self-driving cars from Uber in Arizona. From 2016 to 2018, Waymo has driven over 600 vehicles on Arizona roads.
So you could see the potential in this technology. I cannot predict the future. At this point, I cannot say which way it's going to go, but I can talk about which way it could possibly go and which way I would like it to go. So 2040, so I can imagine in 2040 as having a society where self-driving cars are ubiquitous. People don't necessarily own their own car, but whenever they want a car, they can dial one up and get one in a few minutes.
According to the Brookings Institution, from 2014 to 2017, an estimated $80 billion was invested into autonomous vehicle technology. But to say that autonomous driving will take over may be a stretch.
So I don't see a future where there's literally no manual operation of vehicles. We could clean up the environment and sort of reduce traffic with self-driving cars, but I think that's still sort of a major question. You know, if you take a self-driving car to work and then it circles the block around your office for 3 hours until it's your lunch break and then it picks you up, you haven't really solved any environmental problems, and you certainly haven't solved any traffic problems. You've contributed to them.
So I'm totally one of those people. I'm a car person. I love the sound of a big V8 gas engine throttling up. But I think there's a time and a place for it. And I think a lot of those people are going to start pushing towards, you know, that's a lifestyle and that's a hobby that would be going towards, and they would start adapting some of this technology.
Of course, you can also see the downsides, and the downsides are what if sort of 1 in 1,000 times it doesn't get things right. So I think there are a lot of questions there, but also I was amazed at how beneficial the technology could be, again, if we recognize its shortcomings and we work out how to get over them.
Like if you look at Los Angeles, for example, they can't really build any more freeways. But with the autonomous car and the way they can interact with other traffic, it could really relieve a lot of traffic. I mean, if you were, say, 10, 20 years down the road, if everything was integrated with traffic lights and traffic patterns, in reality, if all the cars were autonomous, you wouldn't even need traffic lights because they could just pace themselves, you know, hold up a bunch of cars here while these guys go, and then kind of pace it in that way.
They don't like those statistics, but we have to accept that people are going to have accidents. When a robot has the accident, we are much less forgiving. We don't accept that machines are going to kill us. We just set a much higher bar for that technology. If we're going to have it on the roads, we want it to be pretty much perfect.
Most change isn't easy. Most change, you know, is challenged at first and then accepted over time, but change happens. It's painful at first, but people ultimately see that, yes, there's a path forward and I can be involved in that path and make a difference.
56% of U.S. adults in a Pew Research study said that they would not want to ride in a driverless vehicle if given the opportunity. So the question is, should this advancement be parked for now, Or are you eager to see the technology of autonomous vehicles move forward?